Hey guys, so in this video, we are going to be exploring the dual mount EFM NEX mount adapter from Ventura. This is a mount that was sent over to me to beta test. The thing that's really exciting to me is just how much more in terms of options we now have with relation to the EOS M. Would having this sort of setup be good for attaching micro four thirds lenses? And the answer to that is a resounding yes. If we take this PhotoDiox NEX mount adapter, whenever you're mounting something, you just got to make sure that the red dot is in alignment with the red on the E-mount. Also, a side note is if you do happen to get yourself this dual mount, you're going to need to swap out the old. So this is the old mount for the EOS M. In order to be able to take off the screws safely, you're going to need a precision screwdriver. I don't think it matters. This here is it's I think cobalt. I just went to the hardware store and I got myself a basic precision screwdriver. And whenever you're wanting to take it out, just, this way you just got to press down and you can easily take out the screws for the bayonet mount. Initially, I had attempted to take off the screws, but I was using the wrong screwdriver. And so I did wear the tops off just a little bit. And I was like, nope, I'm not going to do that. So I went ahead and got myself the appropriate precision screwdriver. The size of this one was 5/64. I don't know what that is in metrics for all of our international folks, but this is the screwdriver size that worked best. So once you get your screws off, you just pop this one in, and I'll show you exactly what that looks like. Once you get all 4 screws out, it's a good idea to just take your screwdriver on the end, just make sure you don't touch your sensor, and just kind of loosen it once it has loosened, because there's a shim that's attached underneath, right? So just loosen that, make sure that shim stays in place. You want to ensure that that remains. And when you take off your old bayonet mount, you just put your new one in, align it accordingly, drop it in, and then tie in the screws. But now the reason I took this off because I wanted to show a couple of things. One of the key things to understand is this bayonet mount is designed for E-mount lenses that are manual. So what do I mean by that? So let's take a look here. So this here is a 25mm f2.8 ultra macro 2.5x to 5x Laowa macro 5x macro lens. This is an E-mount macro lens. If you were to take that E-mount, right? So this is the E-mount here, and this is the E-mount mounting point. You simply drop it in, boom, and it's going to lock in. Now, I've just rotated this a whole ton of times, so I gotta find the right spot. There you go. And it goes in without a problem easily. Now, the challenge comes up is when you take an electronic E-mount lens. So this here is a kit Sony 18 or 16 to 50mm OSS lens. Due to these electronic contacts, what's going to end up happening is Sony, by micromillimeters, makes the inner part of the bayonet mount just slightly wider. And what that poses as a challenge is that, so if I were to take the mounting dot, where's the mounting dot? So this is the mounting dot, the white here. And then at the same time, I take the E-mount here and I line it up accordingly. You'll notice it is a little bit tighter. And so this is, now I can squeeze it in there, boom, and it has squeezed in, but I won't be able to lock this lens into place. Now, I could potentially do it because if you notice here, there's a little screw that's getting in the way. Now, one could just remove that screw and it will lock in. Now, you might be wondering, like, what does it matter? You could, why would you bother with an electronic lens on a manual bayonet mount? So I'll explain that in a second. So the challenge here is you might be able to get this in if you put on an electronic mount lens, but now you have to be really careful because of the width. And now perhaps this is a design that might change in the later part. And I've been talking to Tom and Cole about the possibility of maybe just micromillimeter, just adjusting that just a teeny tiny bit, as you notice here, right? And so, because it almost fits, and when you like, right, it's just so, like, right now it's in there so tight where, like, it's not gonna come out. But there you go. So that's the thing. It's just like I'll have to pull it out now. At one point I thought I was gonna rip this off of my EOS M body because of how tight it was. So it's one of those things where that's why you don't want to use it on your electronic lenses. Now, what's the deal with a manual lens? So I'm just going to move this to the side. So this here is the Voigtlander 40mm f1.2. It is an E-mount lens. It is a manual lens. There's nothing electronic about this. This is a beautiful lens in terms of the look that you get, and it's also an f1.2. And it's got a click. Well, I think you can declick the aperture. Yeah, you can declick the aperture, or you can maintain it being clicky. So if you were to listen to this, yeah, that's when it's clicky. Obviously, as a video shooter, I love a declicked aperture, or rather, I can appreciate that, especially when it comes to adjusting the brightness from indoor to outdoor really easily without making much noise. This is wonderful. Now, here's the challenge though. Although this is a manual lens, if I pop off the end, it's got electronic contacts. Hey, I am upside down. And that brings us to the question of what is the challenge when using an electronic lens, even though the lens itself is completely manual. So same idea. If I line up the mounting dot on that, and same thing here, I line it up to the E-mount on that as such, and it is super snug. In fact, I feel like on this lens it is even more snug. Yeah, so I haven't pushed it in all the way. Once I do push it in, boom, there you go. Now it's good. So, but I am still running into the same issue where there's that mounting screw that is getting in the way of the bayonet mount, or rather the lens being able to turn into the bayonet mount completely. Now, I was telling Cole about this. One of the things he said was it's very likely that screw is there to ensure that when you're mounting this lens, it doesn't go past the point where the electronic contacts make contact with the Sony body's electronic contacts, if that makes sense. But if that is the case, I can totally understand that. So the possible solution here is if we just go ahead and now just demounting this lens. Again, I gotta take the precision screwdriver, slide it in there, and just kind of shimmy this thing through. There we go, just enough so that I can slide this lens off the bayonet mount as such. And so now, one thing that one could consider doing is that this particular screw, if I were to go ahead and remove that, and then let me just make sure that this lands in my hands and into the cup holder. Boom, there you go. So if I were to remove that, and then we go ahead and place the, where does it go? This is the E mount, and that is the E-mount mounting dot right here. Place the two together, and then once it is absolutely perfectly aligned, there you go, push it in, boom, no problems. So I believe this will be able to click into place now that I have the thing entered. Now I lost, that's the problem with when it's off the body, it becomes like a fidget spinner. Is that it? No, that's not it. I think that's it. Yeah, there we go. Boom, 1, and then 2 and 3. Now, obviously, when you're dealing with taking on and off lenses, you don't want to have to deal with having a screwdriver to shimmy the thing off. Normally, you want to be able to put it in, slide it, lock it up, pull it out, such. So that's that. Now, the other thing that I wanted to showcase was, let's go ahead and mount this right back on. All you gotta do is just align it in accordance, drop it in, and then simply one by one, take the screws and using your handy dandy precision screwdriver, make sure you're using the right correct end, and just take that, make sure it's aligned, and it's one. Now, when dealing with anything that's metal and screws and bolts, the reality of metal screws and bolts, and this is coming from one of the things I learned while I was running as a marketing manager for a self-storage franchise. We had these portable self-storage units that we would ship to franchisees, and they were made of metal, and essentially it was like a metal cage that they would have to assemble and put together. Now, one of the lessons that they learned was that when you're assembling these things, when it comes to metal and bolts, you don't want to tighten everything. In fact, when you're connecting, make sure it's all in a little bit, it's loose. And once everything is in, then you go in and tighten it. Otherwise, you're going to have a hard time because if you tighten one, you might find that there's a bit of misalignment due to one area being down more than the other, and you might not be able to get the screw in. So just as a general principle, it's a good idea to put in the 4 screws loose, turn them a little bit, and then after that, one by one, go in and tighten them. And that way your mount, bayonet mount for the EOS M Filmtura dual mount is secure. Now, the thing that I wanted to share here, the thing that has me really excited, is the prospect of the Micro Four Thirds adapter that is used to mount Micro Four Thirds lenses onto an E-mount body. So now the EOS M is effectively an E-mount body. The way to mount any Micro Four Thirds lens is to mount the adapter on the lens first, and then you mount the lens with the adapter onto the body. I'll show you why you don't want to mount this first on here. You want to mount this on the lens. This is the red dot, and boom. And there's got to be a snap here somewhere. So now here's the thing that I have found, that when it comes to snapping, it doesn't snap right away when it's just on the body as such, right? Which is fine, because whenever the way to use this this is why you don't mount the adapter onto the body first. So this here is a Laowa 7.5mm f2 lens. Nice, small, almost C-mount looking lens. What you do is now take the lens from the Laowa, here's a new red dot, and just go ahead and mount it on here. Boom. Now you are snapped in. There is one thing that you need to be aware of and be cognizant of, is that when you're mounting the Micro Four Thirds lens onto this particular Photodiox, and I know they have a couple of other knockoffs, so it's just, I don't think there's anything patent worthy on this, if there is anything. But the thing to be cognizant of is when you have this, there's going to be a little bit of play. I don't know if you see that or if you can hear what I'm showing you. Right, there's going to be a little bit of play. This is what it sounds like. Right, so you just want to be cognizant of that. Now, there is potentially a way to tighten that up. One of the things that Cole recommended was when you are, you can use potentially like a hairband or something, or some sort of rubber edge that you can put in the between the lens and the adapter to ensure that it is going to be tight. Because once you have a little bit of that pressure, then it'll be secure. I haven't done that yet. I gotta find the appropriate kind of rubber thing with a hairband or whatever, because the hairbands that my wife's got, they're significantly thicker than I would have thought. So I might need to find just some really thin rubber bands or something like that, and that could be the solution for this thing to snap into place. This little, I guess, protrusion that you see here needs to align with this little hole over here. And one of the ways to do that is make sure that this lines up here. So we gotta make sure to get it into the E-mount spot. All right, we got that here, boom. And now turn until, there you go. Now it's snapped in. Now, even with it being snapped in, there's going to be a little bit of that give within that. So it might also help to put like maybe a little rubber, thin rubber shim or something like that in here. But right now, for all intents and purposes, this is good to go. Like, I can go ahead and start using this. So this here is a 24 millimeter high resolution 1440p 2.5K setup that you can start using. So not only do you have this, but boom, I'm going to take that off, take this off, and I am going to introduce this bad boy. This here is the 10.5 millimeter f0.95 from Nocton. Same idea. Make sure you get the mount attached first. Once you attach the mount, then you take the camera, boom, and there you go. Now it is snapped into place, and there you have it. Now, I was surprised. I was expecting this particular lens to be significantly bigger, whereas this is actually really nice. With the grip here, when I attach the grip, I haven't screwed it in yet, but actually let me go ahead and screw that in now. So this is wonderful because now you've got f0.95. Now the question is, okay, well, this is 10 millimeters. Why don't I just use a focal reducer on a really fast lens using metabones or something like that? The reason for me recommending not using a metabones for this kind of setup, especially if you want a wide angle, I will discuss or showcase some of that, some of the technicalities, both from an optical standpoint as well as from a mounting challenge standpoint in the next video. But one of the benefits of this, and a little bit of a kind of foreshadowing, the benefit of using both the Laowa, what's it called, 7.5 millimeter lens here, and the Voigtlander 40 millimeter not 40 millimeter, this is the 10.5 millimeter f0.95, is that at ultra wide angle, I will get infinity focus. So I can focus in the distance, and I can also focus to its minimum focus distance, giving me that versatility. The challenge generally with a focal reducer and ultra wide angle lenses, we're talking about, like, this 11 to 16 at 11 millimeters with the focal reducer ends up being something like a 7 millimeter f2, which is this. Now, this versus this, which would you prefer? Practically speaking, obviously, the smaller one. But add to that the lack of effective minimum focus distance when this has a focal reducer attached to it. That's one of the challenges. Now you might consider it like, oh, instead of getting a 0.71, why not get a 0.64 or 0.58, the one that was designed for the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, the original one, the BMPCC OG. Now, the challenge is the wider the focal reducer, in terms of how much it narrows the field of view, the more challenging it seems that it is for the infinity focus of the optics. And so that's where the trade-off is, and that's why it's really important for us to be able to use high resolution ultra wide angle lenses that are already designed for crop sensor cameras, 2x plus crop sensor cameras. And so yeah, that's one of the things that I do appreciate. Now, so let's go ahead and turn this camera on. First, I want to show you the 10.5 millimeter. If I go ahead into the menu, right now I am in, what happened here? Let's go to the menu. Okay, right now crop mode is off, so turn it on. Let's go to a 3x3. That gives me the full sensor readout. Turn that off and then turn it back on. Cool. This is the full sensor readout. As you can see that this is super ultra wide. There you go. Now I'm in focus. This is amazing. Now, some might be bothered by the vignetting here and the vignetting that you see right here in this corner. If you are going to digitally stabilize the footage, then that vignetting is essentially going to go away because you'll be cropping into it just a little bit. Now, on the other hand, the other alternative is to go and use some of these crop modes. So this 10.5 millimeter, if I were to go to 1:1 crop, 1440p, and right away you can see the 3.28x crop. This here, you're looking at about a 35 millimeter field of view, which is one of my go-to focal lengths. And just look at, I mean, it's great. Like, this is perfect. I would think this is probably one of the default go-to lenses in crop mode, which is the 10.5 millimeter Voigtlander at f0.95, which is the focal length here. So this is the thing that really excites me. Similarly, what about the Laowa? Let's take a look at the full field of view of the Laowa lens. So once you take that off, take off the lens and put the Laowa lens on here, align the red dot, boom, it is now snapped in. Now I gotta make sure, there you go. Now that's snapped in right there, and turn this back on. Once it's on, I am going to go ahead and adjust the crop to full sensor readout, and let me also adjust the aperture. Where's the aperture? Oh yeah, this is the other thing that you're gonna have to be cognizant of. All your standard readers are now going to be kind of like upside down because of the nature. So we're at f2 now. And I'm gonna go ahead and bump up the ISO to ISO 400. And now you see, this is a spaghetti arm lens. That'd be, where's the infinity focus? Which way is it? Yeah, now we're at infinity focus. So if I were to go to, I think this is, boom, there we go. So right now that is minimum focus, and that's infinity focus. So this is an excellent vlogging lens, almost full coverage, just like the Laowa. And if you stabilize this using using one of these things, which is a Insta360 Go 3, I used the gyro data from that, and it'll crop right in. Similarly, with the 7.5 millimeter at 1.6 or 2x crop, which is what it was designed for, it's 15 millimeters. But now if I go ahead and turn this right on to 1.1 at 1440p, 3.2x, a 7.5 millimeters ends up being about 24 millimeters. So if anybody actually prefers this field of view, this is a perfect lens for that. Now, Laowa does make a 6mm field of view, and 6mm at 3.2x will probably be something along the lines of 20 to 21 millimeters. So you still got it pretty decent. Now for me, whenever it comes to doing video, like 20 millimeters is like a sweet spot for ultra wide. 17 or 18 if I really need the field of view for action and jiu-jitsu. But like if I had to choose between 15, 17, and 20, either of those are fine, but I'm not going to complement one with the other, right? I would complement it with something like a 24 or 35. So personally, pairing this lens, the Laowa, with this, the Voigtlander, is a great mix with relation to a field of view. So you essentially end up in the crop mode, a 24 and a 35 millimeter. Now, now this is with the Micro Four Thirds attachment. What if we go straight E-mount, right? Because we talked about electronic E-mount lenses. But if we have a regular manual E-mount that we talked about earlier, I showed you with the bayonet just straight. But if I were to take the right here, align, boom, perfect. This is the macro Laowa. I haven't tested out the lens yet. Probably do that at a later time while I have the rental. And just to kind of give you an idea what that looks like, this is the Laowa. Yeah, and that is it fully extended and pull back out. So manual E-mount, no problem. This also goes for E-mount focal reducer. So this is a 0.71x FD to E-mount focal reducer. I can just go ahead and let's see, where's the red dot on this one? Yep, there it is right here. So take that red dot, boom, we're good. Now I have a focal reducer that is E-mount. Now again, the only thing you gotta be wary of, understand that now all your readers are upside down due to the nature of how this mount is positioned. So now when it comes to attaching a E-mount lens with electronic contacts, so if we go back to this 40mm f1.2 and I go ahead and align it up as we mentioned earlier. Now this is going to be a little tricky, right? I have it lined up. It's it's already feeling a little tight, right? I got it in. Now I've taken, if you recall, I took that little screw out that was stopping it from locking in. So I've taken the screw out and let's see if it locks. Yeah, there's no locking. So this thing will turn indefinitely. That's the downside. For whatever reason, it is not going to, there's nothing for it to snap onto. I'm not sure what the reason for that is, but here's the cool thing. I can turn this just enough until there is a point of friction at this right here, right? It's not like perfectly locked in. There's a point of friction. And so I would feel confident and secure enough for me to go ahead and use this lens as such. And I can also see all of the reading distance scales that this lens has to offer. And so, and in case you're wondering what this looks like, so if we go ahead and turn this on and let's go into the 3x3 mode, which is, because this is a full frame lens, if I'm not mistaken. So we're getting a 40mm f1.something x crop. Let me go ahead and bring the aperture all the way down and bring my ISO to 100. All right. And if you look here, let me just focus myself up and boom, there we go. So this is 40mm f1.2 at arm's length. It's pretty cool, right? Now, obviously, if I were to enable the 1:1 crop that is 3.2x, what I end up with is something close to 130, 135 millimeters. I can tell you exactly if I go to calculator. So we do 40 times 3.2x, you end up with 130.4 millimeters with relation to the field of view. So if you were to stabilize this footage, you would stabilize it at 135 millimeters to give you some of that sweet, smooth footage. Yeah, so this I feel like is a great option with relation to the pairings of a 7.5 mil, which is 24, 35, and in fact I might even consider swapping this out for the 6 millimeter, so I get a 20, 35, and then 135. But with the 1:1 and other crop modes, I have everything between maybe a 60 mil, because at 40 mil with 1.6x crop ends up being close to like a 60 mil. So this really functions as two lenses in one without having to do any sort of funky cropping, because these two will vignette when you're doing the full sensor readout. So yeah, but just as a reminder, now if I were to take this thing off, I'm gonna have to turn this to that red dot right here, boom, find that spot, and then pull it out. It's a little bit of resistance, and I think I've done this enough times where it's starting to smooth out. So if I do this maybe another 100 times, it'll become perfect. That's my assumption. But the fact that I can still mount these sort of lenses, the question though is why it has the it has that little what's it called, indent here to snap. The question though is why isn't that indent catching? Is it the positioning of where that indent is? Like, I don't know why the indent is not catching the lens. So if I were to try that again, right here, and then keep going, I can hear it, but it's not catching it. Not sure what the reason is. Upside of it not being caught is now I have my distance scales and everything like that in the front. And it's secure enough. Like it's not like the lens is gonna pop off. In fact, that's the upside, is that due to the tightness of the electronic contacts, I'm gonna have to, there we go. Now you see where the challenge is at. So this is where we're at with the beta test for the EOS M dual mount adapter for some of these guys here. So we've got an E-mount lens with electronic contacts. You can get it to fit if you are willing to just kind of, go with the resistance. This is the Micro Four Thirds to NEX adapter. This will work as well, so long as you apply the adapter first. And when you apply the adapter first, then there should be no issues with relation to getting that lens mounted. Same thing here. This here is the another Micro Four Thirds lens. So as long as you're cognizant of the fact that when it comes to Micro Four Thirds lenses, that you apply the adapter on the lens first, and then you mount the lens on top of the body, then you should be fine. And if you happen to have a manual mount, E-mount, why is it that the manual mount, E-mount, is able to mount easily without the electronic contacts? So if I show you something here, the thickness, I feel like between the darker areas and the lighter areas is it is thinner compared to this one. Just look at that. I think that's where the real tightness is. But I personally believe, as it is right now, this thing is like 99% there. The only adjustment that I had to make, this right here, I had to just shave off just a teeny tiny bit, because initially some of the mounts weren't mounting easily. That were for the EFM mount, and so whereas everything was mounting fine with the E-mount except for the electronic lenses. But that was the only modification. With that modification, it's like 99% there. But it's a question of this is a question for Tom and Cole. When they're making the final version of this, is there a possibility just to make it so that the width, that micro width in these two guys here, I'm wondering, can that be something that is adjustable to allow for the electronic lens to slide in and out ever so slightly? So that's just my thought. But other than that, this is a really, really exciting prospect. I'm looking forward to seeing how the final version, I'm out of focus, there you go, how the final version turns out. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this. In the follow-up video, I'm going to be sharing the reasoning for why the metal bones is both. So this in my hand, I have the EF to MFT 0.64, and I also have the whichever one this is. This is the one for the 0.58 for Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. So in another video, I'm going to be showcasing the reality of why this may not work, but perhaps there's something that can be done to make it work.